Are we ready, Trish?
It's loading up. I'll let you know when we pop up on the screen.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we're good to go.
Thank you, Tricia. Good morning, all. As we convene today, October 10th, working group meeting of the Mystic Tourism Working Group. I would like to, first of all, start off by sharing with all of the members of the working group that my colleague, Representative Meskers, lost his mom just this past week. And so he is in the midst of gathering his family and preparing for the services and won't be with us. And so I'll be pitch hitting for him. And just, you know, I harken back to the days when I was an assistant coach and I'd walk onto the field and the coach wasn't there and I'd hear from the bench, "Oh no." So you can say, "Oh no," if you want. But anyway, I'm here with you and we'll be missing Representative Meskers, but he will be with us at our next meeting. So we've got 3 subcommittees that we're working with. The first one being the tourism group. And if you just quickly, Tricia, can you kind of call the role of that membership? It looks like we have a number of folks with us today.
Sure, let me just get out the sheet. Okay, tourism hospitality. We have Representative Cheeseman, who I saw, she's here. Dan Miser. Robert Hayward.
Here.
Chuck Bunnell. Peter Armstrong. Christopher Regan, here, he's in person. Amanda Arling. Rachel Lenda.
Here.
Bruce Flax.
Here.
First Selectman Cheesebro.
Here.
I believe we have Michael Finley sitting in for Suzette Tibbis.
Here.
Bill Middleton. Senator Summers. And that is it for our official record. We do have a few who are not officially part of the group, but are here. They are part of the working group as a whole. We have Mayor Passaro. He's here.
Yes, good morning.
All right, that's it. Let's roll.
Okay, thank you very much, Tricia. And so I just want to mention for the group at Hull, we now
Tom
have...
Bird's here for the town of Groton watching also.
Thank you, thank you. Also, newly appointed to the working group is a representative from DOT, that's Patrick Zapaka. I'm not sure, is he, did we get to him, Tricia, in time? I mean, it was just late yesterday that I got his name.
He's actually here. I got to him this morning.
Hey, Patrick,
Hi.
welcome. Thank you very much. Okay, that was
Thank you
quick
for having
turn.
me.
Yeah, no, we're glad to have you, and we will be calling on you, sir.
Excellent.
Okay, and so we had a very rough, loose agenda, which basically talked about our second item being a summary of the subcommittee identified issues to date. And I'm just going to quickly tick through what I found in our minutes and from our conversations, and then maybe we could jump off from there in terms of getting to focus in on these and move forward. But there was this discussion amongst the tourism and hospitality group about a taxing district. There also was a submission, and I'm not sure if it was from Stonington or not, about some ideas about restructuring of taxing mechanisms to recognize contributions from the localities that they were coming from. So that's something, we can talk about a little more specifically, get some consensus from the group about, how we go forward. And then predominant, and this kind of goes through all three working groups, is the issue of parking and transportation, being broken down by, of course, public transportation, tourist transportation, and also that of staff and workers. There was a mention about cell phone connectivity, and so once again, I just kind of walk through this with me, and then we should talk about anything else that we've left off, and then begin to prioritize these things. Because once again, this is, I have a binder here that's about, maybe right now going on 3 inches thick of work that's been done to date, and submissions. So we need to kind of boil this down and recognize I guess Representative Meskers, wants to talk about immediate, short-term and then long-term initiatives, because there's an awful lot here to take on. Also, in our previous meetings and discussion, there was a mention about guest experience data, and let's see, it was Linda, and I'm forgetting her last name, or maybe I don't have that right, was going to try to get us guest experience data. Can anybody help me out with that particular?
That could have been me, Rachel Lenda.
Oh, okay, Rachel. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And are we in possession of that yet, Rachel?
It's just data that I can pull. So yes.
Okay. All right. All of this just helps to, quite frankly, educate me. I know you're all living it, but maybe help us to prioritize. And of course, public parking shows up again. And then there was this conversation about walkability and pedestrian traffic, which is obviously, very important to this whole district. And lastly, on this particular subcommittee, there was this conversation about public-private partnerships, which are very, very important, because as I'm understanding, most of the parking here is in fact private. And so, these partnerships are going to be foundational. So at this point, I'm going to ask everybody to kind of jump in. From my vantage point, the most productive way to go forward is very informally. People can just have conversations back and forth. We don't need, any formalities. Let's try to just get as far as we can. So my question is, of those things that I mentioned, which was a summary of where we've been to date, is there any omissions, glaring omissions, things of that sort that I missed in previous conversations? And then my question will be, is there any additional items under this subcommittee on tourism and hospitality that we need to fold in?
I think you did a great job. This might be more for Rachel and maybe even Bruce, but I think the idea that had come up in the past about having a strong coalition coming out of this group, joining others to ask for increased funding for tourism statewide, not for arts, culture, and tourism, to kind of be sure we're part of that voice, not just for Mystic, but for the entire region. I think why it links to what we're doing here is I think we are drawing people to Mystic, and it benefits the whole region if we can get them to stay longer and explore the surrounding towns and areas, go over to New London, go hiking trails and some of our quieter towns. So that was the only thing I think that had come up in past meetings. But I don't know if Rachel or Bruce from the chamber want to comment on that.
Thanks, Danielle. I would definitely say that that's something that the area and the chamber is very focused on, and that is that using Mystic as a springboard to be able to inform people coming here of all the great things that the state has to offer and that are close by, and trying to get them to make their stay longer. So for sure, that's something that we actively work towards. And I think it would be, it's a great selling point for the endeavor here, like what we're doing, and especially if we're going to be trying to increase the amount of money that we get, and why Mystic is such an important part of it, but not the entire thing, that we can use it as that draw to then spread people out across other areas of the state.
So, Bruce, if I can ask you some specifics, what isn't being done that could translate into this particular issue and priority? So the chamber obviously, has a well seated history and program in doing this, but what isn't being done, and what would you like ideally to see to accomplish them?
Yeah, I think, the easy one is funding, but just getting help from really all the different resources, including the state, of helping to get that message out, and maybe help with assets that we can use. And the chamber itself has kind of defined itself from Misquamicut to Niantic, and we're actively, we produce assets that we're using to show from Interstate 95 what's accessible. So any kind of connections or help from other towns and cities being able to feed us so that we can spread that word. We also have an app that we paid for that we use, and we have the hotels and different locations actively getting people to download the app, because it gives them a lay of the land, and information on all the restaurants and the hotels and the shops and areas to go to in one place. So
Yeah, Bruce and Senator Harley, I would just add, I couldn't find a chat function on the app. I was going to share a link, but I know there's a arts, culture, and tourism funding roadmap that was put out that I think would be interesting for this group, if they're not familiar with it, to take a look at, maybe discuss on our next call if there's support for that overall. And that could potentially be an outcome, to have a kind of collective voice about the need for more funding and the strong return on investment for taxpayers to support that. I think Bill Middleton also has his hand up.
Hey, Bill, just before I want to go back. So Danielle, are you referring to the proposal that was circulated at the Capitol last session, or the session before, where there was this coalition of arts, tourism, and they were talking about there's some changes in the distribution on the hotel tax. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, I think they have the hotel and lodging tax in their car. I'm looking at car, they had car rental, online gaming, meals and beverages. They had a few options. So I think to me, and again, Rachel or someone from the tourism group might be more articulate, but at least to me, what stood out was the strong return on investment that other states see. And then also to help not have all these different nonprofits, even we see it in our own town between the Seaport and the aquarium, you'll be competing for line items in the budget so directly, and then some of the smaller ones to have more of a collective, cohesive funding line. Just seemed like it really might help and how it gets broken down. And then I'm sure Rachel's work with DCD and trying to market all of that could really benefit from some funding. So, and again, it just seemed to me a great ask as well. It obviously benefits our area. It's a statewide benefit.
Yeah. So, like so many things at the legislature, it's kind of like the long haul, just the continuum of, being out there and pushing and educating, and then it becomes timing. Look, there's no doubt that we're going to be going into a whole new budget scenario here, and they'll be concerned about maintaining what we've done, and then we've got this whole conversation about funding. I was just in this conversation late last evening about this perception of cuts, but it's really not. It's the change in the federal funding, the ARPA money. And so this is, goes across all sectors. And so, we're going to see and feel those changes in this budget cycle. So, it'll be challenging for the least, but, with regard to tourism, there's no question about the proposal, I think, that was floated previously at the Capitol. And so my recommendation is, that you continue to educate and make that issue front and center. And so let's hear from Bill, and then I just want to kind of go back for a minute. Yeah, go ahead.
Just kind of a couple of things that, money's obviously a central theme, but I think before we ask for money, we have to articulate what the money's for and have a very clear plan for it. And I think it's useful to think in terms of, what in software they call the UX, the user experience. What is that experience of visitors here, from how do they get here and what happens once they're here? And I think that needs to be a little broader in terms of, sitting in traffic on 95. Or what airport do they fly into? If you talk to the aquarium, roughly half their visitors are from out of state, right? So do we acknowledge that TF Green Airport is roughly half an hour away versus Bradley, which is over an hour away? While it's out of state, it's a lot of ways much more convenient. Do we look at having some kind of organized transportation to those airports? Do we look at commercial flights into Groton again? Very helpful. And as you mentioned, cell phone service. It's extremely difficult a lot of times to even get a phone call off at exit 90. In fact, when Representative Metzger's first called me to ask to be on the committee, I had to text him because we couldn't have a voice conversation. And that's not necessarily a funding thing, but it definitely very much goes to the user experience here. What happens once they get here? We talk about parking and traffic, but that's just sort of part of it. There's a lot of things that we can think of, I think, that don't necessarily directly involve funding, but need to be addressed in terms of that overall user experience.
Yeah, Bill, you're absolutely right. And we need to be realistic about this and also recognize, what our bandwidth is. I think by, building that priority list of those tangential things like, this communication, connectivity, we can continue to move forward and also, quite frankly, begin to more strongly build our case with regard to trying to access additional funding revenue sources. So very shortly, what we're going to task all of you with is to boil this thing down to, maybe it's a list of non-funding initiatives in a priority fashion that we put together a contingent of the appropriate people to get it over the finish line. And then, parallel tracks, we work forward on the, I guess I'll call it the elephant in the room, which is, the funding. And we can't just be going out requesting funding because without having built the case and quite frankly, being prepared for it. I'm doing a lot of work on this CIF, Community Investment Fund that we have here in the state. And the requests are wonderful and, visionary, but they're not ready. And so that becomes, the litmus test. So yeah, that's very important. Yeah. And so help me out. Rachel, is that Rachel?
Yes, thank you so much. I'm Rachel. I'm the Director of Tourism for the state of Connecticut. I work for DECD. And
Rachel, we haven't had you in yet, but you have to come over to the Commerce Committee so we can, sit down and really get into the minutia.
I would love that. I would welcome that any day of the week. I am Connecticut's biggest cheerleader, and not because I'm paid to be, but because I want to be. So the first thing I want to say is I appreciate Selectwoman Cheeseborough and my friend Bruce down in Mystic, who are tireless in their efforts on advocating for Mystic. And a point that I really want to convey is, and I think I should back up and say the why behind it is, oftentimes I'll put on my sole proprietor hat or my LLC hat as a small business owner when I'm working through decisions on how to market, the ease of marketing the state of Connecticut for our constituents. A lot of the work that I do out of my office is working with small business owners to help them elevate their brand, their business, to get them exposure on the major platforms that we have and the amount of following. And I know that, Bruce has been firsthand recipient of those efforts and, Mayor Passero in New London. So, in thinking about the efforts that we're putting in, I think what Mystic has all the bones. It has all the structure in the sense of the guest experience. Something I said on the last call was that if you look at the reviews, right, the consumer expectations and the post-consumer experience after visiting, whether it be the Argia cruise line, taking a ride on the Sabino, going to Mystic Oyster Club or one of those experiences, 9 times out of 10, it's a 4 3/4 star out of 5-star experience. So I really don't think that the efforts this is just my opinion, out of this committee should be targeting how to increase the actual guest experience once they're in Mystic, because that is already stellar. And I think our private businesses are doing an unbelievable job delivering that experience to our guests, which is giving it this world-renowned stature. And, you've got Chris over in the Old Mystic Village and that whole area, and he's just doing an incredible job, catering to what the consumer wants. So now thinking about how we're going to market that, I am always hesitant on marketing something that doesn't have the infrastructure to support the efforts after the marketing's been done. Right. And we know that even this year that Mystic is down in visitation traffic. when I pulled a report back in August, it was down about 10% over prior year. It's lifted a tiny bit since then, towards the positive direction. But if we're going to put forth funds and really put a solid advertising plan in market, when there isn't enough parking, when there isn't enough way to move people around, then that's going to bottleneck up, because now you're putting dollars behind this effort. And I do think marketing Mystic is incredibly important. And I do think advertising dollars behind Mystic is incredibly important. But I also would be remiss if I did not advocate for the surrounding towns like Bruce and Danielle did. And that is New London. That's, East Lyme, that's Stonington, that's even upwards towards Norwich. We know that Foxwoods Resort Casino is a point of interest, is the number one point of interest in Eastern Connecticut. So to think outside of just that part of Groton and that part of Stonington is critical. So that would be the information that I would share to the committee today.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Rachel. I just wanted to add, I don't want to speak for Groton. So John, you could jump in here, but I think from a local leader standpoint, like everything Rachel said is spot on. If any marketing dollars is spent, I think it's more on people are already looking at Mystic and how do we encourage them to stay longer in Connecticut and explore the region and all the other assets and help lift up some of the other communities that could really benefit from that economic boost. And I do think it segues perfectly into, I think, the other big focus of this group and why we had asked our state partners to help us look at it is like, how do we more effectively move people around, and not just for the quality of life of our local residents, but also I think as Bill Middleton touched on, to hopefully improve the experience of people when they are first getting here to be able to move around better. So just to say again, I don't know if anybody from the Village or Aquarium are on, but those are two locations that we've wanted to explore more of how to keep people more in their lots without burdening them, and also the hotels that are down there and how can we more efficiently move people around, and if there's ways the state could partner with the towns on that, because that's just something that's out of our grasp to be able to tackle.
So, but let me ask you, Danielle, how do you see the state partnering?
So on that, it could be a few things. I'll start with a positive. So in the past, we talked about a water taxi system, and it had always been ruled out because a few different reasons. One, we now have a great private property owner who's on the call, Bill, who's willing to potentially give some of his land. The Seaport is willing to run a water taxi, but the other missing piece was DOT. It's the actual land where the water taxi would need to be built is there. And in the past, it had been really not on the table. And more recently, they've been wonderful to work with, really helpful, and we are positively moving forward on that. We applied to the Connecticut Port Authority for a grant for design and engineering. So again, these are all ways the state, through existing mechanisms, is being really helpful to the town. I think looking further, if we were ever to explore something like a trolley, or helping to expand parking within the aquarium area or the Village or something like that, that's something that would be out of really local hands. So if there's a way the state could help find a private purveyor of a trolley system that might be willing to pilot it on weekends, something like that, where it might be not necessarily even funding, but helping to connect the dots through maybe some of their connections and business channels. But I think those are just, high level, some of the ways, but other people on this call have been looking at these issues probably longer than I have. So if they have other thoughts, please jump in.
So, hey, Danielle, that's very helpful. So what I'm hearing is that DOT is now very engaged in this possibility or vetting of the water transportation. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they've been really helpful. And I will say one other thing, and I think with the new commissioner, and again, I want to say every interaction we've had with DOT staff on all fronts has been wonderful. But I think with the new commissioner being more complete streets and bike pedestrian minded, it is getting better. But I guess that is one other area where most of our roads are state roads. And the process as of now for how to create sidewalks or bike lanes is very cumbersome on the local municipality. And this is conversations we've had, and probably could use this group to help augment it. But if there was a way for DOT to be more of a partner to municipalities, because right now we have to, pay money to an engineering firm to get fully designed engineering plans, which can be hundreds of thousands of dollars to create these kind of complete streets to move people around on bikes and pedestrian ways more easily. And it's just, at least for us, every time we go to our Board of Finance, it's a no, which I understand somewhat. But if there was a way to simplify the process or to be more of a partnership on state roads, or some mechanism, and some of the grants are great, but a lot of them are for more construction and not the design and engineering portion. So I don't know if anybody else on the call has more experience with the pedestrian and bicycle ways, but that's just one perspective we've had.
We now have our DOT representative with us.
Oh, good. I'm glad I didn't say anything bad. I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah.
It's all right. It's a judgment-free zone, so permission to speak as freely as you guys would like. Honestly, Danielle, we hear that a lot when it comes to, trying to partner with municipalities, especially for design. We do know a lot of our grants are construction-based, but, especially when it comes to state roads, I do think that we have made, a lot of grounds on trying to come up with creative ways to get, complete streets, involved, within your municipality. Sometimes the way it definitely can be cumbersome, but a lot of times we work closely with the region. So this would be CCOG, and they help prioritize a lot of the projects within the municipalities. But I'd be curious, Danielle, just out of curiosity, I'm not sure. I'm starting to learn the people on this call. I don't know what town you represent.
Oh, hey, sorry. So Stonington. And
Stonington,
I don't know
okay.
if Kate Rattan's on the call from the COG, but she's really helpful with everything
Yeah.
transportation.
Gotcha. And we've done quite a few RSAs out there, if I'm not mistaken, for Stonington.
You've done one RSA for us that I know of, and then one, I think, for Groton, but John could speak to that.
Okay. So, just, a lot of times, it comes down to priorities. And if it is a really strong priority, then I think the department would be willing to help work with you guys on that. From a transportation perspective. I guess ultimately what we want is, usually typically from the town's perspective, to come with us with an approach on something you guys want to do. I do hear a lot, it's a state road, you're the state, you guys fix it, but we can't really do that anymore. You want like initial buy-in, not just from the municipality, but from the communities themselves and your stakeholders. But if if that's a priority within you and your town, then we're willing to work with you guys. I do know matches can be tricky, and transportation investments are very expensive. There is no doubt about that. But, depending on the type of project that it is that you guys are looking to do, I think there's creative ways that would come up to try to help you guys.
So when you
Thank you.
talk about buy-in, Patrick, you're talking about the match?
Correct. And that's typically what we'll see is a lot of the federal funding, if it's a federalized project, for example, it's typically an 80-20 split. What that means, 80% is federal, 10% is usually the state, and the other 10% is typically with the municipal buy-in. And that's usually where it hurts a lot of towns, that some of the smaller municipalities may not have either the staff or the budget for such, improvements. Because as we know, transportation is expensive. Even sidewalk can be in upwards of $1 million, right? So it's like, it is very expensive, and we know that.
Yeah, and this is a theme that has come out, in our work thus far, and particularly in the transportation parking subcommittee, that the smaller towns, and I come from a city. I mean, I even see it in my city. They have to, leave opportunity, I'll put it that way, on the table because they can't make the match. And then the question became, okay, can you use I actually had this question just yesterday. Can you use state dollars to, make the match. And I don't believe you can, right? To make your local match.
No, you can't.
No.
But it depends.
But-
So a lot of times it also depends on the type of funding. So for example, if you look at a project, if the design is 100% state funds, then we might be able to finagle a way to pay for that portion using state money. And then construction's federal, even though there's some percentage. So there might be a phased approach where we can use funding 100% for us to build that project.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing from you is that, we need to crystallize what the project is. And
Yes.
then project specific, we can talk about funding opportunities and creative ways to get there. So
Yes.
to all of our, subcommittee members, that's, make a note on that, in terms of how we follow through on trying to, once again, optimize and scale opportunities.
And I'd also like to add in too that, because I represent the Bureau of Policy and Planning, the agency is set up and we have, engineering, construction, planning, public transportation. So there's different facets of the agency, but, our background, we focus on a lot on road safety audits of the RSAs and then corridor studies. And what we're finding that we're doing for the corridor studies is we're allowing, the regions to come and do a pitch meeting to the department. And a lot of times it's an opportunity for them to come to us and say, hey, we have a good purpose and need. This is what needs to be done, and we're willing to be more of a stakeholder, and or depending on what it is, we might even take the project in full if it affects a state road. So there is that opportunity too as well. Now I can't make promises and say we're going to build everything, but we do know if there's a need, the purpose and need is clear and defined. There is the opportunity for us to take that in full.
Okay, that's very helpful, and it gives us hope. And also, I just want to commend you, the team, and the Commissioner Euclid, on kind of having a new approach, which we just heard from. I think it was Danielle, about kind of engaging now, which is key to all of this. So one of the things I wanted to kind of talk, and I see Commissioner Boughton on with us too, because this transcends all three of our working groups, is, I'm not sure if it was Danielle or our DECD representative, but I guess a question that I'm looking at, from the 50,000 foot level is, we've got a number of different communities here, and you've got the Chamber of Commerce, which it spans beyond just one locality. But is there, and we've got the COG. So in Connecticut, we don't have county government. And so, COGs have, stepped in and taken on a very important role in view of the fact that, we're a little bit peculiar, compared to other states not having county government. In an instance like this, where, in the beginning of this conversation, we started to talk about, it's important to have, all of the communities to help them, surrounding towns, they're accessing them, to get to these destination points. They're part of, this landscape. So you've got the Chamber of Commerce organizationally, you've got the Council of Governments. We don't have a county government. And in fact, Commissioner Boughton, in the very beginning of these conversations, talked about a model, and I think it was the Cape May model, where they formed, an association which encompassed the geography. I throw that out. I'm wondering what people's thoughts are about that. Is it a problem for us that we're still kind of single-handedly, we do get together in certain entities, as we just said, Chamber, COG, and I, by the way, and I'm not for layering for government or any of those other things. I just wonder, when we're trying to have this inclusivity, which is very important to each community individually. Yeah, hi, Rachel, yeah, you get your hand up.
Thank you so much. A suggestion that I would have that you saw a group of people in a unit that's already in place is you have the regional tourism districts. And I really do think that there is great power in each of the 3 regional tourism districts that we have. There's Western, Central, and Eastern. And Chris Regan is chair of the Eastern Regional Tourism District. Bruce Flax is the treasurer of it. And you've got all of these key players, brilliant people, brilliant business owners, and business advocates. And you have a municipality representative from each town within the footprint, the 41 town footprint in Eastern Connecticut. In addition to that, there's also a roster of industry support. So there's Chamber of Commerce industry support. There's museums and heritage. There's National Heritage Corridor. There's all of these different facets of the tourism landscape in Eastern Connecticut that are represented. And again, those, if you're not familiar with the districts get $1.2 million. They're a line item in the statewide marketing budget, and it's $400,000 in each district that they have to execute. And the job for the execution of that money really is localized marketing, ways to target and help uplift the smaller businesses that need help marketing their their entity to create awareness and help them with their marketing tactics and things like that for exposure. So I think, and I know Chris is in the Capitol right now, but I don't know if he wants to speak on it or if Bruce does, but I do think the Eastern Regional Tourism District could be an opportunity. And I think that they're a group of extremely passionate individuals about tourism too.
Yeah, thanks for that, Rachel. And yeah, we'd love to hear from Chris. And by the way, thanks for being, in person there, Chris. My question is their lane solely tourism? Could they deal with some of the things that, for example, we were just talking about that, are more of a kind of a regional beyond just a town issue? I don't know. Are they an entity that could, take on the subject of connectivity? Some of the things we've talked about here, the egress and access, from the interstate system. I mean, is it a singularly solely tourism focused mission?
Our mission for the tourism district
Turn on
is
your mic.
Is it on?
Okay,
Yeah.
speak closer to it.
The tourism district is really for fun, is for advertising and getting the tourism experience for the tourist to be a good experience, and then to get connectivity with regards to attractions, businesses that are in tourism to flourish in our 41 towns, not just singularly just Mystic itself. So I would say in regards to infrastructure, I would say you're probably better off with COG on that, because that's with the CEOs of each town, because they're going to, we can help support it, but I don't know if we're going to be the driving force for that.
Okay, that gives me some clarity anyway.
I have one question in regards to Patrick with the 80-10-10. Would that apply to a parking structure also?
It depends. So in the department, when it comes to transportation funding, we have probably about 30 different funding categories. So depending on how it's written up would be, well, whether it's eligible or not. So I can't say yes or no, but I have seen, we have built parking structures especially for TOD type stuff or, other urban areas we built parking structures for. So we can do it. There's no doubt about it. I'm sure FTA also has funding for parking structures as well. So
I'd like to reach out to you and talk to you about that if I can.
and I can do some research for you too and get back to you.
Okay.
Oh, for everybody on the call on this.
Patrick, who did you say, the other entity that has funding for parking?
Maybe FTA, Federal Transit
Oh,
Administration.
yeah, okay. We should talk about that in our next group, okay. Am I missing anybody's hand here? No. And I wanted to kind of go back and we, in the beginning of this working group, we talked about legislative initiatives, and one of them was headed up by the Restaurant Association, Scott Dolch, and I'm just wondering the status of any conversations now with that association, as we tee up for the 25 legislative session. Is anybody engaged?
Senator Harley, sir, I missed the first part. What was the conversation with Scott and the Restaurant Association pertaining to?
Yeah, no. So we know that they were very much a part of, a legislative initiative with regard to, the funding, the sales tax on hotels. And I'm just wondering, is there any conversations going on now in preparation, for the next legislative session? Did
Okay,
anybody-
perfect. That's great. I haven't talked to Scott and I need to. I think, and I would apologize, I had to miss the last meeting. So I did share in advance just something that we've been kind of working on, in all honesty, in a bit of isolation, about a potential look at sales tax. We did build on something CCM had done. I think that was, relatively supported by the Restaurant Association years ago, but kind of took a little bit of a different take on it. And again, especially current legislators, yourself and Representative Cheeseman, others, your feedback on it. If the idea of taking an existing 1% of a overall sales tax or a subset of it is just ridiculous and off the table. We also put in a potential of an additional one. We obviously don't like an additional tax, but if that's the only way, but we've been hearing a lot from residents about the need for some funding to come back, but also understanding it needs to be balanced with other towns and cities. So anyways, that's what we put forward, that proposal that I think was shared with the group, but it's a great point. We've only reached out to like Cost and CCM and the COG. We haven't reached out to the Restaurant Association, so we can do that between now and the next meeting.
Yeah, and Danielle, with regard, so I saw that memo that you summarized, I guess the work or the conversations or the proposals. And my question is, what of it? What's the plan?
The hope would be that we wanted to float it with this group. Like I said, we're talking with Cost and CCM and our COG about trying to put it forward as a legislative priority this year, and to have hopefully one of our reps or senators put it forward as a bill. But I mean, the hope would be that a percentage of the sales tax could go back to municipalities for related needs. And I think we had outlined infrastructure such as like sewer, roads, sidewalks, as well as public safety being potential uses. And just, again, we used Mystic just because we had the numbers as an example, but it's something we think all towns and cities could benefit from some extent.
Yeah, but Danielle, do I recall that it was anchored in relation to what the particular locales, revenue, tax revenue contributions, so to speak?
We had put forward like a hybrid approach again, and really welcome feedback on this, but thinking, some of it should be based on where it's generated, but also understanding, we want buy-in from other towns and cities. So I think we'd put forward a formula where it is weighted a bit for where it's generated, but we would also take into account the population of towns and cities.
And so Does everyone on the call have a copy of Danielle's memo outlining this? Did we share that, Tricia?
I don't believe we did.
Okay, so I would say make sure that everybody on the working group gets a copy of that. Because I know we just got it, isn't that right? Didn't we just get it like in the last day or two?
Is this the one that I sent to you yesterday?
Danielle, this just.
I sent this before the last meeting that I wasn't
Oh.
able to attend, and I should know if you sent it out, Patricia. I'm sorry. I thought you had sent it out to the group, but if not, it'd be great to recirculate it. And again, there's no
On which
pride.
memo? Depending
was-
on which memo, if it was sent to me last week,
Yeah.
I believe I sent that out. If it's just the one that you sent, I believe Monday, then I did not circulate that. I thought that was. Are you talking
Okay,
about municipal revenue diversification local sales tax policy proposal?
Yeah.
Yes, that's circulated, and actually, Chris Regan just showed me a copy that he has printed.
Okay, he brought it with him. It's
All right,
great.
so that has
Um,
been circulated.
yeah.
Okay.
And again, no pride in authorship. This is our first stab at this, so people with a lot more experience, we'd really welcome the feedback and input on it.
Thanks a lot, Danielle. And then we might just, Trish, kind of just put out for those who are with us and those who are not, just kind of a note that referencing that piece that was done and, inviting response, comments, or the like on it as we go forward. And I see Representative Cheeseman. Welcome, madam. You got your hand up. Yeah, go ahead. And we don't hear you.
Okay,
Uh,
there, how's that?
That's good. That's good.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Just quick comment with regard to that 1% sales tax. The original intent, hope was that that portion derived from local municipalities would be returned to them. Obviously, that did not happen, but that was certainly my understanding, particularly as far as the restaurateurs and the stores were concerned and the municipalities. On the second, to your question, Senator Hartley, about the sort of layering of different entities, I think, we have the Eastern Tourism Region, we have a actual tourism coalition. I think absent a particular group or individual being tasked with addressing an issue, be it conductivity, connectivity, transportation, there are just too many Indians and no chiefs. And each organization is working very hard at doing what it does, but there really is, and whether it's to do with the fact that we don't have true county government, there are many willing partners, but no quarterbacks. And I think that is one of the issues. I think distilling down what needs to be done is important, but also being very clear that a plan without a way to implement it and people to actually do it remains a plan that gets put on a shelf. And I don't need to remind the senator how many times that happens. So those are my 2 cents.
Okay. And, very well noted. Those are, the questions that, come to top of mind. So my response to you, Representative Cheeseman, is, so how do you see us tackling that issue?
Well, I think it's part of our task once we have our recommendations down and some delineated paths forward, then we need to get people who are willing to take ownership. And whether it comes from one of these groups, whether it, the COG does a great job. They've done a lot in terms of planning. Do we say, hey, are you willing to take on, actually championing the infrastructure piece? These are the people we've identified who are willing to help you. Here's a plan going ahead. I think part of our final report should be not only the steps we need to take, but ideally an outline of the entities or organizations that we think are willing to take them on and have indicated they're willing to take them on to move this forward.
And to your comment about the fact that, there's a lot of, and I'm getting that sense too. I'm trying to focus, my understanding of this, area of the state. And that there are, a lot of organizations, entities in place. That's what my question was about, the tourism district. Is it just solely in the tourism lane? Do you see a need for, someone, I don't know, person, entity, and once again, a lot of this is, by virtue of, volunteer or, collective contribution to kind of tie this all, stitch it together. Or can we operate, or can we continue to operate, with a lot of different players on the ground? But, how do you come to some kind of focused implementation, accountability?
I mean, I think the ideal would be to have one or, a very small group. If you could get one person, that's great, but who are absolutely going to, their sole task is to move the recommendations forward. And that's
some leadership
Yes.
Group. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's, keep that out there and chew on it and try to perfect it as we go along. So listen, one of our charges, or the charge, quite frankly, I'll be derelict if I don't get this out there, from my co-chair, the chair of this working group, was to prioritize. We've talked about a lot of different things, and I just want to mention too, there was also this conversation about going back to when we were having this DOT conversation, that the trolley didn't work. There were comments in my notes which say, the trolley did not work. So, and we could probably get into that when we get into this next subcommittee. But anyway, yeah, we don't want to kind of reinvent or go back, old endeavors after new that kind of just, go nowhere. So Representative Meskers wants a priority list of the conversations that we have been having. And I don't know if there's anything else that we've missed. We've talked once again pretty broadly about these things. And so I guess, the task that we would leave with this subcommittee is to, based upon our conversations to date, or if there is anything that, quite frankly, has been missed in this conversation regarding tourism and hospitality, to identify it and to do a prioritization of them. And you could send that into the clerk. So we have it in our possession when we will be meeting in I guess, what is it, 2 weeks, Trish? Is that what this interval is?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yes, Commissioner Boughton. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you. Busy morning. Good to be here. I just
Yeah.
wanted to kibitz in on this and say that I've been doing a little bit of homework, and you had mentioned Cape May. I also did some work in Hershey, PA, which is kind of a different animal because they have such a large benefactor being the Hershey Chocolate Company. But what Cape May is one thing they do have, and I don't know if Mystic has this, maybe they do already. They have a historic district designated, which is roughly 380 acres, about 600 buildings fall into the historic district. So if you've ever been down there, that Victorian feel that you have in there is really managed and encouraged and regulated by this historic district. But a lot of the big stuff that's done there in terms of getting people in there, infrastructure improvements, strategic planning, things like that are done by their county, which our counterpart would be a COG. And then there's different subcomponents within the county that deals with certain things. There's also a town of Cape May too that has some tourism groups there. But what is remarkable is how the alignment that they're all in. They're all on the same page. They're all in agreement as to what needs to be done. They do meet and set priorities. Those priorities are driven by the county, but are agreed upon through consensus with just about everybody in the community that's a stakeholder and you know, or an officer in these groups. It's pretty fascinating, but it works and you can see what happens when things are unified in terms of attracting investment, attracting infrastructure improvements and things like that. So just wanted to throw that out there. Hershey, PA is different because the Hershey Chocolate Company, you know, they have a large endowment there. So all the neat things you see down there, you know, they have the Hershey Kiss light poles and things like that. That's all financed by the endowment that the company had. So I'm going to try to talk to another community as well and see how they are so successful at really microcasting, targeting their investments, right? And so one of the things that we talked about and we've talked about here is that we're not going to have a lot of money going in the future. And with so many disparate groups all at the table saying, I need money for whatever it might be, whatever worthy, they're all worthy projects. We need to develop some kind of priority list overall of what's to get done because, you know, frankly, the state can't do it all and the federal funding isn't going to do it all either. And so we're just going to have a list there. So I just wanted to mention it to you. It's somewhat impressive, again, the alignment that everybody's in that particular area. And you can see the results. It's fantastic. So just a thought.
Yeah, and that's very, very helpful. I had a chance to look at it very briefly, but not to the extent that you have. And, you know, to your point early on, Commissioner, you know, we don't need to reinvent the wheel if there are models out there that, you know, exist and have been tried and true. And then, of course, the other point is, you know, we quite frankly don't have bandwidth, you know, for, you know, more admin and that kind of thing. So we've got to be pretty creative about how we task ourselves, you know, to really get over the finish line. And with that, I will note that we quite now are on the 11 o'clock hour, which is supposed to be the Transportation, Parking, Traffic Subcommittee. And I am so proud to say that our chair of that is, in fact, Commissioner Mark Boughton. How about that?
Thank you, Senator.
How about that for a gift? Huh?
It was a great lead-in.
Yeah.
I missed the first part of the last meeting, so I'm going to put Patrick on the spot if he's still on. Patrick, were you able to kind of brief up the prior committee on the improvements? I talked to Commissioner Eucalito. He's going to put together a list of projects that are going to be done in that area, even if they're 10 years out. You know,
Yep.
You know, what's the vision, where we're going, and then he said that his representative on the working group would then do a briefing for us. So I don't know if that's been completed. I don't think it has because we only talked
It hasn't.
Okay.
It was just brought to my attention not too long ago, but I will get something together for everybody here and be able to present that.
Yeah, so what we'd like to do is do a sort of a level set of, no sense talking about an exit that needs to be realigned if we've already got plans to do that, and DOT's like 10 steps ahead of us, which they usually are. So I thought that would be really helpful, and that would help us target exactly what we need. So Commissioner Eucalito said he'll get that done, and he was going to have Patrick do a presentation for us when it's ready. It is comprehensive and it's a lot. So they need a little bit of time to pull all that together. And we appreciate the cooperation from Commissioner Eucalito on that issue. I know we've had some discussions about parking. One of the things I think would be of value to us is to do with DOT just a drive down there and take a look at some of the areas that people had. I think that would be something we should do after Election Day, because I understand how busy everybody is up till those. Then you want to rest after that, but there's no rest because we're rolling right into this. So once everybody is ready to go, we'll try to schedule something in the middle of November or so to look at some of the areas designated for parking. That's one thing that everybody's sort of unified on. What shape it takes, how it looks, where it is. Doesn't really matter, but everybody's like, we need more parking and we can't bring in more people for more parking. So I thought it would be important if we did a site visit on that to get a sense of where everything is and how everything is laid out. And then finally, We talked about organization already. I'm just looking at my list here. And I've done some research with some of the other very highly successful tourism areas across the country. All of their infrastructure is driven by their county, sometimes by their state, and there's a blend of federal money in there and some county money and some state money. So we're going to have to get creative there. There is some federal money out there, but to actually program it, we're going to need local matches and things like that. So I'm going to be doing some more work on that. But it was interesting listening to how they planned on getting people in and out of these sites that have become really popular across the country. So, Patrick, I don't know if you had anything you want to add. I know you already spoke, so I don't want to put you on the spot. It's okay if you don't. But if you have any other thoughts, love to hear them.
Yeah, I mean, I know, a major capital project, we got like $150 million for the Gold Star Bridge.
Yeah.
So that's a huge project within that area that's really going to make a difference to handle, anything from freight, emergency vehicles such as, fire trucks and stuff like that. And it's really going to be an advantage for the whole area down there for that major capital project.
And we have we just announced the shovel turning on a track improvement in, I think, Westbrook. I think, right, it will speed up the Amtrak line that goes through there by it'll cut about 25 to 30 minutes, according to Commissioner Euclid, off of your trip if you're heading eastbound. It's a railroad bridge that's too low, it's too narrow, and it's 80 years old. So that also is an incredibly expensive project that we just started working on. So that's good stuff as well. So I'm going to throw it open to the committee. If folks have anything else regarding transportation, and at this minute, I think we really need to do the level set first. But certainly, we got everybody on the line. So if anybody has any other thoughts, love to hear them right now.
Commissioner, one of the things that came up, in previous subcommittee and I think perhaps all of our subcommittee work is this challenge about the local match. And I see it across the board, quite frankly, in, departments and agencies where there's, a hard stop because they just cannot. And I understand the model. It's about buy-in. Are there any other creative approaches to this that you might be aware of?
Yeah, so the short answer is on a straight, intersection or railroad bridge or bridge project, a local match either by the state or the city or town is necessary. Generally, that range is anywhere from 20% to 10%. If there's some kind of green component to it, you may qualify for a tax credit. And everybody says, well, cities and towns and states, they don't get tax credits. When they do a tax credit for a city or town, the feds do it in the form of a direct payment. So we call that direct pay, where they'll give you a check for that, basically a percentage of the project, and it's stackable, so you can add different things onto it as you go through, and depending on the impact you're making on the environment. So in some cases, you can braid these grants together and help get that local match going, but it still is a challenge, and it's something that the governor and I have been discussing because it's going to become more and more acute as we get deeper and deeper into the bipartisan infrastructure law. The first 2 years, all the money went out was planning money, and it's great. Now people are done with their plan and they want to implement. Well, the implementation is where the big dollars are, right? That's you take that intersection that you planned on fixing for safety reasons, and now it's going to cost you $7 million, and then 10% of that is significant, right? Is $700,000. So we are having conversations. There's nothing really solid on here, but that is going to become more and more acute. The state, smartly, you guys in the budget, you have money for local match on the state side for DOT projects. So that was a good thing and was well thought out. And Commissioner Euclid and his team are using those local matches to leverage more federal dollars. But the local communities are going to start, I think, turning down grants because they're not going to be able to afford that piece of it. So we're working on it. This is, I can't emphasize enough how difficult this budget coming up is going to be and challenging. So I know I sound like a whiner about it, and When I was a mayor, I used to say the same thing. I was like, I thought I'd finally get free of that, but it really is going to be a challenge for our elected officials. But I think we can get creative as the session goes on, and we'll have to see. But that will be a problem, and we have flagged that for people going forward. And sometimes there are creative ways around it, but it's hard to do that.
Yeah, or even, on a state level, some technical assistance to try, to bring another set of eyes on a local project, on ways to get there,
Yeah, so many of the COGs have added staffing, grant writers, to be able to accommodate this request. And CCM is actually contracted with 2 different grant writing companies where you can, if you're a member of CCM, you can get, particularly if you're a small town or a smaller community, you can get them to help you write the grant. We also, the build team will go out to the community or town. We've done this the last 3 years, look at your project and guide you in the right way to try to access those dollars. We have a searchable document of all 300 grant programs in the bipartisan infrastructure law, and we will search it for you. We'll show you where it is. We'll get you the notice of funding when it drops. We'll help you fill out the paperwork. But we can always use more capacity, and particularly the smaller the town, they don't have a town planner. They don't have they outsource their engineering. It can get really difficult for them. So we're sensitive to that. We really try to help them. Now, there's so many programs in there that it can be overwhelming for our mayors and first selectmen. So we're doing everything we can to try to work with them.
Yeah.
Commissioner, I have a question for you. In regards to a parking structure, if you have the 80% federal, 10% the state, and then you have the 10% which is local, could that be private? Where if a parking structure, a private entity put up money and controlled the parking structure after the fact, would that be a scenario that would work?
Sort of like a PPP on that. So they would have to make a donation to the local municipality or to even, I guess, maybe the COG, if the COG is I don't know if they engage that kind of funding, but they would have to make a donation to do that. But one of the things of value, what some communities, what some states have done, Massachusetts just did it recently, is created an infrastructure bank. So you could make that donation to the infrastructure bank and you could flag it for that project, which would then be tax deductible on your federal return. And then they could plow that money back into the project. They can do it in the form of a revolving loan or just a straight grant. That's the requirement. So that's the kind of ways you can leverage some of that money. But we'd have to find a spot to park that 10%. It can't come directly from a company. There are actually, I don't want to confuse the matter, but there's some programs like charging stations where you can use a third party's dollars, but in this case you can't, for roads, bridges, for the big parking lots, parking structures.
Got it. Okay.
In the same vein as the public-private partnerships, Commissioner Boughton, can you speak to the tax increment financing that the feds are so keen on? I think that there are some limitations within our state. Is that true?
I'd have to go and do some research on that. We don't delve a lot in that because there are so many regs in the state about that. Certainly, if you want to talk offline about it and see what you've seen, and we may be, if there's an issue where we're prohibited from doing it, we certainly can try to figure out why and then see if it makes sense to maybe make some adjustments in those regs. But everybody likes PPPs, as you know, until they realize that somebody, and the third P is going to make money, and then everybody doesn't like PPPs anymore. But it's really the way to go on these infrastructure improvements. If you can do it, like getting somebody to raise money for a parking garage, pay for the 20%, and then on the back end, manage or operate the parking garage through a contractual relationship. It's how you're ever able to braid money together, and it's what other states are doing. So I'll take a look at that for you. In fact, I'm writing a note right now to have our team look at it. We also have a full team that we can bring on into these meetings, and I'll have them at the next meeting to be able to do these kinds of like these questions that come up and then circle back and make sure everybody is able to get the answers that they want and get some information out there. Especially you guys at the COGS who do such a good job. Any other questions?
This is Danielle. I just
Hi,
wanted
Danielle.
to hi. I just want to say thank you to you for all the work you've done, but really to everyone on the call. I mean, you're looking after your districts and the whole state, and to have so much time spent on trying to help us solve some of these issues is really appreciated. And just offer, let us know on the local side if there's things we can do between meetings to help augment some of the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I can't, I echo those comments, Danielle. It's a total team effort, and people are doing good work all over the place. That's a good thing about these working meetings, is that we get to hear about the good stuff that they're doing, because sometimes that story's not told. So good point.
Too often. I guess one other thing, just since Senator Hartley had brought it up, if it's already come up, or if it does come up in any of your research of when kind of trolley type models can work in a community and when they just don't make financial sense, because that is something that is often brought up by residents. You know, why don't we just have a trolley system that moves people around between the hotels and the popular destinations? And that, quite honestly, we just don't have a great answer. Like Senator Hartley said, I think it was probably 10, 15 years ago that I think one did happen in Mystic, and it didn't work, but I've never heard, you know, financial reasons exactly why, and if it might be different now, or if we might just be in the exact same situation.
You know, the trolleys, I ran a trolley for 12 years in Danbury. They don't make money. They don't even break even. But that's not why you run the trolley, right? You run the trolley to get people out of their cars, and to not have to drive down Main Street and, you know, look for parking and do other stuff. So when you roll into that context, you can actually save a few dollars, but they are an investment. And that's sort of a micro thing that we can talk about, or maybe make a recommendation about. Usually the good ones, that's a great question you asked, because I asked Hershey, because I was on their trolley. That's run by a nonprofit there that has actors on there, and it was so much fun. But and I asked them if they actually break even, and they said not really. So even though it's full just about every run they do up and down Main Street, so it's just a cost of doing business out there, for two reasons: get people out of the cars, and the secondly is to help showcase other areas of the town or city you might want to visit, and they look at it as an investment that way. But I don't think we should delude ourselves thinking that it'll pay for itself. It doesn't.
That's already a helpful answer. Thank you.
So can anyone give me the history of it? We did try it, Danielle, is about 10 years back. Is that what you're saying?
Chris, or somebody who's been here longer than me probably knows better. It constantly comes up, but it was well before my time.
Yeah, it was definitely more than 10 years ago. And it wasn't well received because I don't think it's education wise. But the hotels didn't do the buy-in. A lot of people didn't really know about it. And it wasn't a moneymaker. It was definitely costing a lot of money to operate it. So then it basically just disbanded. So I think if we're going to do a trolley, one, you got to figure out what the route is going to be, so it's not going down Route 27,
right,
stuck in traffic. It would have to be a loop that's basically, as we say, as locals, we know the back roads, and we know how to get to certain pressure points quick before everybody else can. That would be where you do a circle and drop them off, and then come back that same way and do that loop on both sides, one on Stonington, one on Groton. And I think that's how you try to solve moving the public and not get the congestion going down 27, because you've got one way, one road going down, one road coming back. That's it. There's no two lanes. So you're not going to be able to move that much traffic. And I think that's one of the biggest problems you have with the trolley. The other question I have is in regards to trains, the train stops that were proposed. Do you have any update on those, or where the state is, or state DOT is on that? And then also the Groton Airport, if there's any discussions on trying to get any commercial flights into Groton itself.
Airport's a great idea. I think we had just touched on that at one of the last meetings. I like to talk to the airport administrator out there, and the FAA has a ton of money for improvements. Going from a general aviation field to a commercial field is a big leap. But many of the general aviation fields fly charters, to Nantucket and to the Cape and to Atlantic City. Even some of them go as far as Hilton Head and Myrtle Beach for golf and stuff like that. So I'll see if I can reach out to him and talk to him. But if they need runway improvements and stuff like that, there's a ton of money out there for that, and I'm sure they're leveraging that already. But that's a great thought. The train stop, the Shoreline East. There was some discussion about maybe just having a pickup on the high capacity weekends, 4th of July, Labor Day, Memorial Day. Seeing if we can get people to bite on that. Again, that'll be a budgetary issue. We have a lot of constraints. I'll certainly look into it. I had mentioned it before in the past, and it was felt that it wouldn't be, there's enough ROI on that, but maybe we should do some surveying, might be a recommendation to see how many people would actually consider doing that kind of travel out to the particular area. So we should probably get some data to back us up on that kind of request. I'll talk to the airport administrator, and we'll have some more talk about the train.
Yeah, I have some stuff from Tony Sheridan in regards to the Groton statistics. But Groton used to have commercial flights in and out of there a while back. So
what's his name?
Tony Sheridan from Eastern Chamber.
Oh, okay. Do you know who the administrator is out there? I'll find out. Don't worry.
Yep.
Okay. Good. That's a great idea. Is there a helipad out there? Do you know? I'm on the airport thing right now.
Yeah. Well,
they operate.
Yeah.
They operate helicopters out of KGON. It's primarily the reservists. I think the Army.
The Army National Guard has a major facility there for repairs and. It's a theater level support group that's there with the Army National Guard.
Okay, thank you. No commercial helicopters lessons or student?
No, they do fly. There are commercial helicopters that do fly in and out of there as well.
Okay, great. It's good to know. Okay, I'll look into that.
I would just add that Alex Peterson and John Moody are the contacts that we have at Connecticut Airport Authority.
Okay, John Moody and Alex Peterson?
Yes.
Okay, and if you have any information, Kate, if you could send it to, it'd be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
With regards to the increased train, you had mentioned trying it on holidays, but also if there was a opportunity to increase it on large events that are happening in the area. So on like our festival weekend or the Santa Arrives by Tugboat, which are two enormous events here in Mystic, if we could have that train increase on those weekends and be able to market and leave 95 open, more open than it would be. And I don't know if that's, again, from the cost perspective. And also from the trolley perspective, the chamber has a bunch of history that was before my time, but I'll try to pull that stuff out and see if there's any relevant information for the discussion now.
Yeah, I'd love to see what they thought about it. There was a value, absolutely. The trolley is really just small buses, right? So we know that. So yeah, I'd love to see what they thought about it, why they pulled the plug on it. If there's anything in there that might be of interest. That's great. Good. Any other thoughts?
Go ahead.
Patrick from DOT. Is there any interest for like a micro transit pilot? I know we've done that in some areas in Connecticut. It's almost like bus Ubers. So I know we were talking about trolleys, but I do another thing is like a micro transit hub. I don't know if anyone has any interest in that, or if that's something I should do some research to see how that works, how that's been working.
Love to hear more about that.
SEAT operates a microtransit bus in Stonington, and they've also have a pilot for microtransit service in Noank section of Groton's, which does affect this Mystic area as well. It comes up to the bridge. One significant challenge that we have is congestion, right? So if they're riding on 27, that is impacted. Another challenge is that they are geographically conscribed, so they don't connect. If you want to get to New London and you are somewhere in Stonington, you need to first go to the Mystic Village and get on the fixed route service to get over there. Similarly, if you want to get to the center of Groton, you would be hard pressed. So you have to come to Mystic on the drawbridge, walk over the bridge, get a different micro transit to be able to get into Groton's system. So I think that that's a fundamental challenge with that. We do have driver shortages. We cannot hire enough CDL drivers. There is a program that DOT has to increase the number of CDL drivers being trained and approved. It can't happen fast enough. We're definitely like using a lot of overtime to staff the existing microtransit services that we have. Another challenge is that while fixed route service, could provide I don't know how many people fit on a 40-foot bus, but I think it's probably somewhere like 150 or something. However many people can be moved at once, you are constrained by those minibuses to about 8 or 12. The reality is that it's usually a ride for 1 or 2 people. And the headways can fluctuate vastly. So we try and keep them to a 20-minute headway, but so it's not unheard of in New London to have a 2-hour headway, which is not reasonable for most people. At that point, they're going to be choosing an Uber if they have funds, or choosing not to go to work if they don't. So those are the options with microtransit. I think that the entire seat service is really underfunded in terms of providing a level of service that is adequate for people who need to get to work, but also for tourists. We cannot, it's a service of last resort at this point, with 1 hour to 2 hour headways and limited service on the weekends. So we have rolled out some the governor's initiative funded some rollout of extending those hours in Stonington, I believe, and for Sunday service, maybe Danielle knows better. But again, we're running up against issues of having enough drivers at this point.
Okay, that's very helpful. Other thoughts?
I just want to make a comment about the driver situation. It is something that we have been working on through workforce initiatives. And we've quite frankly been trying to recruit out of DOC, and we've got some on the ground programs set up. So it's been a challenge. It is a priority. And it's quite frankly, it takes some time here to build this pipeline. So it's good for me to hear this being reinforced. No. And then I know that translates to your overtime, and that's the thing we're all dealing with on the budget front.
There was also the transit district had requested authority from DOT to utilize Uber drivers to shore up some gaps for microtransit. And I think that this is something that really needs to be looked at from a legal standpoint, because if you are providing a ride from a public transit agency that is not with a driver that's been certified through that CDL process, and is not subject to drug tests, and is not subject to vehicle inspections or asset management process, I think that is concerning. But we're also, we'd like to provide better service now, and that's the option.
Hear you. Yeah.
Excellent. Further thoughts?
Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, just a point of information. There are local ordinances that restrict bus traffic in certain parts of Mystic and Noank. So I just want to make you aware of that.
would a trolley be considered a bus? I would think it probably would. I'm just curious.
I think
Yeah,
it's based on the number of passengers. I'd have to look to see what that is.
Okay. That's all. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, that, if you had a trolley and you could get, say, if you had a parking garage that went along with it, and you could have the people that are running the parking garage basically run the trolley a couple times a day, that would be a win. I don't think, unless individual communities want to chip in for it to have it run, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how you can make that work. But if you got local ordinances that you run into, we probably have to consider that as well in terms of changing those local ordinances, or not, depending on what the will of the community is. Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. Any other thoughts related to transportation?
Yeah, Commissioner. So I noticed that there had been some folks have raised the question about water taxi transportation. And I'm not sure if that's something to be explored, or has that been kind of taken off the conversation list.
Commissioner, I don't know if you were on when I first shared an update what we're working on locally. If that's helpful, I'm happy to chime in.
Yeah, go ahead, Danielle. I missed it anyways. I didn't get on until 10:30.
So really briefly, it was one of those kind of long time priorities in a lot of our planning documents for a long time. And thanks to, I said, some new partnerships, the Mystic Seaport, Bill Middleton, who's on the call, and then also DOT just being really wonderful partners. We have identified a potential location just off of exit 90 that could be a viable spot for a water taxi. The Seaport's already running a mini version between their dock, and they've leased a dock right by the drawbridge on the other side, so they don't have to wait for it to raise up. And we've applied to the Connecticut Port Authority for a grant to do kind of engineering feasibility. So it's still early days, but I was just noting it that something that for a while was kind of seen not viable because of different hurdles has really been moving along now, thanks to some of the partners on this call. And we're happy to keep people updated as that moves along. Yeah, just to give that update.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Danielle related to the water taxi? Okay. Great. Further discussion. Any other thoughts?
So in the notes that I had a chance to kind of walk through also, Commissioner, I noticed that the subject of the complications involved with the drawbridges. I don't know if that's, of a top priority, or if that's, something that.
Yeah, there is, and anybody from this area, please jump in and correct me, but there is one at the end of, by Queenie's, at the end of where Main Street is, that comes up at a certain time to let boats in and out, goes down at a certain time, and then traffic tends to stack up. It's not the newest bridge in the entire world. I don't think it's that. Isn't that particularly maybe 50 years old? I don't know. But if anybody wants to brief us up a little bit on that, that's been the issue, is the stacking that goes on, particularly in the really high volume times during the summer and holidays and things like that. Anybody else have any thoughts about that?
During the summer months, it goes up at 40 past the hour.
That's it, right? Yeah.
And that's the Bascule Bridge. It's what, 100 years old as of what, last year, the year before. So.
Yeah, I mean, we'll take a look at that. That's why I want to hear from DOT if they have any thoughts about that. I mean, that's probably a $200 to $300 million project by the time you're done. So certainly, but it would be interesting to know if there's any long-term plans related to that. But right, I remember 40 past, last time I was there, 40 past the hour, everybody stops, bridge goes up, then it goes down, and it can create particularly in July and June and August, can create quite a stacking of traffic.
It creates gridlock for a good 20 minutes at least.
Yep, and then it goes back up again.
And I think one of the other questions that came up on the bridge locally, actually, comes up frequently, but recently, is that we didn't have an answer for. So if DOT or others, maritime law might know, does it have to go up every single hour? in the peak summer months. The rest of the year is more on demand, which there isn't as much demand, but I genuinely don't know the answer, and it might need to, but that was just something else that was questioned.
I can add some nuance for that. With regard to when the bridge opens, there is a memorandum of understanding between DOT and the Maritime Association of Connecticut. They've got an acronym. All of the boat or all of the water-oriented businesses have a memoranda that that limits how many times movable bridges can be closed, or like for how many times they can be closed an hour. So that is the structure that we're working under, and it affects all of the movable bridges down the shoreline. I would also add that the DOT is undertaking a project to rehabilitate the Bascule Bridge. They're probably unlikely to replace that bridge with a modern structure because it is historical. And I would also note that local advocates have pushed really hard for some sort of bike facility on the bridge because it's an open grate system. It does look like the rehabilitation will include a, it's kind of like a very thin fiberglass board that will be attached to the decking so that cyclists can ride over the bridge without falling down. But you know, you're still working within the curb to curb of that, or the out and out to that bridge. And it's not going to like improve the pedestrian space or, you know, give you shoulder strength like that.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I as the chief mentioned, there's a lot of stacking that goes on for 20 minutes after, and by the time all the traffic gets cleared up, and then everybody's starting to slow down again because before you know it, it's 40 after the hour again. So it's a problem. And there is a big demand for bikes, electric bikes, other, you know, scooters now that people are riding, the electric scooters. So that would be very, I think, handy, at least getting over the bridge and using it that way. But a rehab is probably, I think, is probably more appropriate and practical and probably more likely, like you said. But the one in Westbrook, we're raising up so that bigger boats can go underneath without having to stop any kind of traffic. There's no, you know, train traffic going over it. So anyways, any other discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in to make sure that we make a clear distinction between issues with parking and issues with congestion. Because most of the time, you know, the experience in downtown Mystic is that there is parking. You can find it if only you can get through the streets in order to find it. And issues with, you know, getting the trolleys through the traffic in a reasonable amount of time, the stacking up around the bridge, those are all congestion issues, right? So I just want to make sure that we think about those two things separately. So something, you know, like the micro transit stuff, Uber, that helps a lot with parking. It doesn't help with congestion, right? And that can be a lot of the time more of an issue than is parking. But you get real tired of looking for parking if you can't move down the street.
Good point. Yeah, good point. Some might argue, well, there wouldn't be much congestion if people had a place to park, but I think it's more people when you get there, you tend to want to, you don't know what you want to look at. So you don't really necessarily want to take a parking spot right away. It's sort of sightseeing in your car, if you will.
Yeah, we get some circling for sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Right.
May I comment on that?
Sure.
So that is something that we've seen time and time again. One of the problems that we have, and I do think that the bigger issue here is that parking, because what we found through studies is the vast majority of people that are taking the prime parking spots are usually some of the workers and people that are in downtown Mystic, you know, for extended periods of time. And we're trying to address that through enforcement. But to your point, they're intertwined. What we find often are people are going down there looking for parking. It's not readily available during the peak times. They're going through side streets. They're going through other areas trying to find that spot. And when they don't, it does create the congestion. It creates some cascading effects that having an absence of suitable parking creates. So I think they're closely connected, and we see that through traffic complaints, through cars going on roads that really aren't meant to handle traffic. They're really residential streets, and they are very thin. There are no traffic There's no parking spots on some of these streets, so they're all interconnected. All these problems lead into one another.
Agreed. Thank you.
Yep, I've been there during those time periods, so I know exactly what you're talking about, Chief. And Lindsay, thanks. Other thoughts?
Hey, Commissioner, can I just go back for a minute to Kate on the bridges? So you talked about the memorandum that exists with the boating community and the towns on the timing of this. When was that done? How long ago was that done? Is that something that is dated?
I know that it's documented in the Eastern Connecticut Rail Transit Study, but I don't have it on hand, so I can't speak to it. I know that it's been longstanding. It's probably 40 or 50 years old, and it is really about the rail bridges. But maybe, and maybe actually, maybe it affects rail bridges more so than road bridges. But I know that there are limitations for that. I can try and dig that up.
Yeah, I guess my question is, has it been looked at and is it current?
Oh, definitely not. And, it favored marine business for sure over transit. And it is a limitation. So with respect to the trains, I believe that they were limited to 24 closures per day, something like that. I'll have to look at it. But it was a limitation on how many Shoreline East trains we would be able to bring across into New London because it affects Shaw's Cove. So we have to account for all of Amtrak's trains as well as all of the Shoreline East trains. Anytime they come into the station, they've got to close that waterway into Shaw's Cove, and that would, it affects all of the bridges. So,
yeah, that's a rabbit hole. Yeah, I get it.
But I'll try and dig that memo up.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Senator, you got any? We're going to say something?
I'm good. No, I think Patrick does though.
Yeah,
Patrick.
Just one more generalized comment. I probably should know this. Is there from a transportation perspective, is there a visionary statement that we should look at? I know we want to improve the area, we want to improve congestion, but as far as complete streets, is it walkable? Are there safety concerns? Are there other things that we should look at? And the reason why I say that is sometimes as we build a case, it helps to try to find the funding that may look to try to make these improvements, right? Are roundabouts considered or are they horrible, right? We have a lot of different types of recommendations we can come up with, but I like to know kind of what's on the table, what isn't off the table, right? I mean, it's great to have parking, but if there is no parking, then how are people going to get to work or to these places? Stuff like that. I'm picking up on a lot. I know I'm going to present on projects coming up, and I just want to kind of know what's on the table, what's off the table. I don't know.
I like Patrick. I like that idea. I think we should have an overarching statement when we complete our report that this is the goal. Whether it happens in 10 years, 20 years, or 40 years, this is the direction we're driving to. Encompass the projects that are currently already planned, and then make some recommendations for some new projects that will tie it all together to enhance being able to get in and out of there. So I think that's a really good sort of a mission statement, if you will. And I'm going to tell you, not to go on a tangent here, but I spent some time with FHWA, and they let me look at rejected applications, not the ones that made it, the ones that didn't make it for grant funding. Some of them were requests of 20, 30, $40 million. It was fascinating. And they laid them out. So this team didn't get the grant because they didn't have an overarching mission of what they were trying to do. They didn't tell the narrative of what they wanted this area to look like. It was literally one sentence on a piece of paper, or it was a bunch of technical jargon, important, but the folks that are awarding these grants, they want to understand what's the impact to the community. So that's going to be invaluable to us, particularly as we start applying for dollars. So I think it's a great idea, and I'll make sure that we incorporate something like that. And we should have that. That should be focused with just a separate meeting in terms of what we really want to get out of this after we do the level set. So a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm just
Thoughts?
wondering whether potentially DOT maybe your performance metrics unit could provide a look into the congestion in the subject area. They're much more proficient at the NPM RDS data set than I am.
Yeah, that's true. No, not that you're not proficient. So yeah, I think they may have that data already. We should probably take a look, Patrick.
Yeah, I will look into that and see what I can pull from.
All right. And I have two staff people that can help you as well if it's just a matter of digging up information. You know, I don't want to overburden you, so just let me know. Shoot me an email, and you can use them at your leisure to dig up some of the stuff.
Well, I think a lot of it's online. I think it's actually pulling the data that either we can use in a report. So, but let me take a look and I'll let you know. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Further thoughts? Okay, so we're running up against we got about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to give you 10 minutes left of your time, but I just want to quickly review and of what our next steps should be. One is that we're pulling together a level set meeting, and that may happen off of our regular cadence. So as soon as we're ready to go and Patrick's ready to go, I'll call a meeting of this subcommittee before even maybe our next meeting. It just depends when we get the information. That'll level set us and then understand what we have coming, and we'll talk a little about what needs to be done. The next step beyond that, I'd like to do a site visit out there, and it's optional. If you can't make it, you can't make it, but myself and probably Representative Meskers and Senator Hartley is always welcome. It's just depending on everybody's schedule. I'd like to take a ride down for a couple hours and take a look at some of the stuff in person. Organization is being worked on in another community. After the site visit, then we can, and in the meantime, I'll also reach out to the airport and talk to them a little bit about some of their future visions and about their thought of maybe adding some more commercial traffic, if that's possible or not. We'll investigate the thought of a micro transit pilot or hub. We already have a couple there, as Kate's pointed out. Doesn't make any sense to add any more in. And along with that, I would assume would be the discussion of our trolley. And then I'm going to look at some tax increment financing, see if we can come up with some mechanism to be able to look at a parking garage. We're also going to gather some DOT metrics about traffic down there and go from there. And then obviously develop an overarching mission statement of what we want to accomplish. Anybody have anything else? Did I cover everything? Good. Okay, so we'll be meeting in 2 weeks, if not sooner. And if we meet sooner to go over the DOT's program, we're going to just focus in on that. We're not going to entertain any other stuff in there. I'll talk to Patricia, make sure it's posted appropriately and that it's taped for the public out there. So that concludes our subcommittee on transportation, and we'll see you in 2 weeks, if not sooner.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
And so while we are scheduled to start at 12 o'clock for our infrastructure resiliency, climate, sewer, stormwater subcommittee, I'm suggesting, if there isn't any opposition, that we take advantage of these next 11 minutes and start it now, unless anybody has any objection to that. Tricia, is this, can we procedurally start a little early?
I believe we can, as long as we are rolling on YouTube. The only thing you might want to do is take a quick look at the people who are already here and who's missing.
Yeah. So to that point, I believe the subcommittee, the infrastructure subcommittee is Senator Somers, James O'Donnell, Kate who's with us, Chris Regan, I know is at the LOB, Rep. Baumgardner, I haven't seen today.
Is that another
Um,
meeting?
Yeah, and Lindsay Fairchild, I don't know if she's with us.
Yep, she's.
Yes, okay. Rachel, yes, is with us. Emily Tooley,
No,
don't know, is she with us, Tricia?
not yet.
No, okay.
She was here at the
Um,
last meeting, so.
At the last meeting, yeah, okay. And then Danielle, I know was with us, if she still is.
She's not.
And, yeah.
She was
And Matthew,
last two, but she's not here now.
okay. Matthew Dayton.
Not in attendance.
No, Suzette Tibbs.
She has a stand-in for today. He is not here either.
And just so I am here. I just couldn't hit the mute button.
Danielle is back. Danielle's phone is now part of our meeting. So Miss Cheeseborough is here.
Okay, and John
He's
Burt.
Yep. Hello.
and Sarah.
And John's here. Okay. All right. So yeah, why don't we just kind of dive right in? And once again, what we've kind of been doing is a summation of where we are to date in terms of summarizing first off the identified topics, and then entertaining any others that perhaps have not been heretofore before us. And so just briefly kind of doing this based off of the minutes of previous meetings. On this subcommittee, we were talking about issues of infrastructure involving raised roads or raising of roads, dredging issues. There was also some conversation about zoning, and I think was it Matthew Dayton who was to be looking into some specific zoning data which might apply here in this conversation. And then we were also, I guess, talking about the very broad topic of dredging, the dredging issues and challenges, as well as flooding issues. Now, I'll mention to you, and I'm assuming that everyone has gotten, I mean, there have been an incredible amount of work that's been done relative to this particular area of the state and the issues that have been front and foremost here. And with regard to the infrastructure issues, there was a study, I guess, as recently as last year, January, done by the town of Groton, which was a pretty exhaustive study. And I guess I just want to start there and ask, okay, incredible study. It looks like it covered in depth the issues of vulnerability, sustainability, and so forth. Are you into an implementation phase now with this study that was done by the GZA group?
Yes, but it's not existed for very long. So right now, one of the first things we want to do are those backflow preventers on the river. We have a CIP currently to engineer them and see what the cost would be. So that's one of the first things we want to do. And then we're doing a pilot study on one small portion of River Road, raising the road, seeing how that works out. So we're trying some early things and hopefully expand from there.
So you have a blueprint. The town of Groton.
Yes, we have a blueprint. It's money. It just could be money down. So.
Well, that was my next question. Have you costed this out?
No, that's what we're doing right now. This year, we hope to have some costs for the next fiscal year, which actually we're starting to prepare some things for. So hopefully next summer we'll be doing a CIP to at least implement a little bit of things.
Yeah, because quite frankly, this is a pretty broad leap here. This is, yeah, I mean, very well done, incredibly in depth, and basically spells it out, quite frankly, vividly. And, you know, as we're having this conversation right now, you know, we see what's going on down in Florida. And, you know, heart goes out to all of them, but yeah, I mean, this is the world that we are in now, and obviously coastal property, you know, insurance issues and so forth. You know, personally, I just got rid of my coastal property down there, and I'm so happy. But you know, there is nothing more important, I think, than, you know, being ahead of this freight train. And so to the town of Groton, you know, to have initiated this and now completed it, you know, you are clearly a step ahead. I guess I'm going to invite our other participants to talk about where they are on this particular issue, and then maybe we can, you know, talk about, once again, kind of fact that this is not just a singular town issue, but quite frankly, it's a whole geographic area. So let's see, Stonington.
Yeah, I'm happy, Senator Harley, to come in, and I know others on this call have some really great experience. You know, everything John said, and again, maybe one of the priorities coming out of this is a cohesive ask. And while we're focused on Mystic, it's, you know, the state can't handle all this. This has to be a federal kind of partnership to look at a lot of these issues and how we think about, you know, stormwater and preventative measures, in addition to some of the other topics that were raised. One thing I would say that's come up that is maybe state specific in our case, in Stonington on the Mystic side, I did do some digging thanks to people who prompted me. Our sewers are back in a moratorium in Mystic, so we can't accept any new development right now because of basically inflow from the Mystic River into our sewer system. And one of the specific requests that we have had kind of ongoing with the state, and I understand, it all comes back to funding, but is that for the study portion. So when we did our I&I study, it's pretty much a 50-50 split between the state and the municipality, which is great. But when it comes to the actual construction work, I believe it goes back to like an 80-20. So it's 20% grant, 80% loan, and that's still helpful. And they do lock it in at a lower rate, but it's still only a 20% grant. So it's really hard. So I think the current number we have to line under Route 27 for Mystic is probably $3.4 million. And that's pretty hefty. And I think the reason why this particularly we think links back to tourism is this is a lot of the, you know, hotels and tourism infrastructure that's on there. It also clearly hopefully would benefit the state to have more development, appropriate development in that area. So that was one thing, just in talking with our Water Pollution Control Authority, they did want us to bring up the deep clean water funds and how that funding model might be potentially looked at.
Yeah, and that's basically, you know, I think what's got to happen is to identify every possible, you know, revenue line spending, you know, support here, because this is obviously crucial for businesses, for life and limb, and there's, I would think, you know, money, federal money, that, you know, we can connect with and leverage, not just singularly, but, you know, as a region.
Yes, no, exactly. And I think one other thing, and again, I don't mean this by any means as a criticism to DEEP, because as a municipality, we understand being understaffed, but we just, I think locally, we don't know if it's a staffing issue or if it's your balance with how many regulations and then ratio to staff. But another thing that has come up is just DEEP's turnaround time in reviewing applications. And this again came up from our sewer kind of liaison, but it's come up in other areas. So that might be a funding thing, but it might be also looking at policies and regulations of what's needed and maybe what might not be if they really can't get the staffing to turn things around in a timely manner, even for municipalities, never mind for private residents and businesses.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things is that, there is a coalition that's built here, obviously on the municipal side, but also with business and small business, SBA, and I just noticed, for example, in the study where they actually, do take pictures and walk through the business areas and kind of identify, redline the vulnerable bricks and mortar, vulnerabilities on, businesses, which, nobody kind of, or most often, deal with this proactively, but prospectively, and obviously that becomes a real problem. I noticed Matthew Dayton, who was just on with us, and I don't know if he's still with us. Hey, Matthew, how you doing?
I'm still here. How are you?
Good, yeah. Thanks for being with us, Mr. OPM. Yeah.
I think that would be Secretary Beckham. I think has to be Mr. OPM, not me.
Mr. OPM. Well, you're Mr. Next OPM, and in this group, you're our Mr. OPM. So just so we put that on the record. Yeah. So, I don't know. From the executive side, with all that's going on, we see what's happening in, certainly other states, Florida and so on. Is there any kind of coordinated initiative to begin to address this and begin to the best of our ability preparation proactively?
So I will say I did just join a couple minutes ago for the climate meeting, and I assume we're discussing climate infrastructure here.
Yes, we are. Yes.
I know that we do have our climate leader here over at OPM, and she is working on all sorts of plans on a coordinated basis across the state. And I'm thinking that it could make sense to kind of group, kind of link up her with some of the individuals here, as if we can identify some of those projects that you guys have identified, and kind of see where she is seeing where some projects could also improve the infrastructure of the area.
So Matthew, who is that?
That's Joanna Wozniak Brown.
Okay, so
I'm happy to link you up with her.
Can you, share with Tricia, our clerk, and her contact information? Yeah, and we
Absolutely.
would very much like to invite her to maybe be with us at the next subcommittee meeting to help us frame this conversation, because it's quite overwhelming in all honesty.
Absolutely. I'm happy to.
Yeah. And just offhand, are you aware of, okay, so she is dedicated to this one particular project, if you will, and is there any line item that's associated with this initiative in conjunction with DEEP, or?
I don't know if there's a specific line item associated with it. Obviously, we're going into budget discussions for the next biennium coming up soon. So obviously any of that will be part of those discussions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I just want to ask if there's a policy issue. So the infrastructure kind of crosses over into DOT's territory a lot. Currently, the standards for bridges and culverts are looking at a 100-year FEMA flood zone. The challenge, especially with Stonington and Groton here, is going to be the sea level rise. And that is not accounted for within the specifications in the drainage manual. So I'm wondering how we can be sensitive to the fact that we are on in a coastal community and will be experiencing that sea level rise in these projects. So because this is how I envision a lot of the infrastructure projects moving forward are going to be maybe some grant funded things that don't involve transportation, but mostly it's all the drainage, culverts and catch basins and conveyances and bridges and other things like that that are transportation related.
And that was directed, Kate, to our, I don't know if DOT is still with us.
Yeah, I was just looking and I think Patrick dropped off, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think he did.
Maybe that's something that could be circled back with Joanna, who is wonderful. I worked with her at Condot for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe you can put that in the form of a question that we could, share with Patrick, and then we get Johanna also, in our presence, so that we can maybe, tick through this, I think, very broad, overwhelming subject matter. So Groton took the initiative to do this resiliency sustainability plan, and I'm just curious. None of the other towns have, and was there anything in particular which moved Groton to put together a blueprint? Because I think this is important upon which to move forward with.
It really is. The immediate reason was we have several roads that are impassable every time we have a heavy rain.
Oh.
We have one road that even at only a halfway decent rain closes it off. So we had to do something, just complaints from the public living there.
Mm-hmm.
And Senator Hartley, I can share, I think when we first started this, we shared some of Stonington's older resiliency reports. Groton's is better, just to be honest. It's I think very they broke down really good projects that are feasible to actually take on. A lot of ours were much bigger, multi-million-dollar projects. But we do have things like John mentioned in our SIP that are looking at specific, stormwater, alleviating certain roads that flood, a few in downtown Mystic that we're working on. It's good for this group to know we're doing it, but it's nothing that I think we'd be asking the state to help with.
And I don't know if that was one of the documents that was circulated. Was it, Danielle? Because I mean, we do have the Groton sustainability plan, but I might be missing it if it was shared.
It was one of the probably first emails that went out. Again, it's worth looking at. I don't know how helpful it is for this group in particular, but I know Lynn is part of our climate change task force, so she might have more to say. And then Kate, through the COG, they did a great overview of kind of for every region, hazard mitigation and climate subset. So that was a huge help, just on a positive, to have funding and for the COG to kind of take that off of municipalities' shoulders.
Yeah, very, very important. And we probably don't have the COG's work on the hazard mitigation, do we?
I did provide that in the beginning, and then also 2 days ago, Patty, I sent an email to you and Representative Meskers with identifying those top heavy hitters for Groton and Stonington in the Mystic area in terms of the projects that were the highest priority. There should be a link, but I know that you guys have some trouble with links, so as well.
So is this the Mystic Resiliency Sustainability Plan? Is that what?
No, this was me going through all of our regional plans, including the hazard mitigation plan, the MTP, as well as the sewer plan, and just identifying the top with the help of Mr. Burt and Danielle, going through and identifying which were the highest priorities.
So wait a minute, is this the link where there was an attachment that listed, I don't know, looked almost like
Mystic WG infrastructure recommendations. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if Patty sent it out to this whole group or not. I'm
Yeah.
sorry to throw you under the bus if you didn't
Yeah.
get that.
No, I did get a submission and truth be known, the attachment I was really unable to print. And if that's the one.
It's a crosswalk for the hazard mitigation plan, and that crosswalk process has like many columns, and that's just the way that it functions. So I apologize that it isn't really super useful in that way, but I think that, you know, if you print just columns A through D, that should probably give you what you need. Unfortunately, it doesn't include great, you know, there is a approximate cost range for many of the projects in column R, but those are very approximate. So that's the nature of the hazard mitigation plan. That's kind of where we are with those things. Just to recap for everybody who may not be looking at the document, so Groton identified that expanding available standby power for the critical facilities was important. Funding to access and study all roads and highways susceptible to storm surge, sea level rise, severe rainfall, flooding events, and sunny day flooding. And I would just note that, you know, we're kind of ruminating a little bit about evacuation planning, and the REPT, the Regional Emergency Planning Team, work here at the COG and how we can be useful. So that may be a resource. Then we go into implement specific pump station resilience recommendations from the facility study completed in 2022. And then on Stonington side, there was a need to look at potentially dieting Coogan Boulevard. This would potentially include stormwater improvements and would also improve safety and access for multimodal transportation. Determine appropriate methods of floodproofing the storm sewer pumping stations. And also doing a vulnerability assessment and planning work with the Seaport Museum. And there were kind of like 3 different specific planning study elements there that all kind of tied together. And then looking at, you know, diking systems or raising, diking systems, comprehensive planning effort. But funding was needed for all of them.
Yeah, I noted that, you know, funding to be determined and so forth. So through all this, I think really where we are at is, I mean, we have this comprehensive study plan blueprint from Groton, and then we have, you know, the other summaries that, you know, Kate kind of walked us through. And yeah, it's all about infrastructure improvements. And I guess the question will become, what is available on a federal level primarily, and then, you know, if there are also state opportunities. And I don't know, Emily, can you speak to that?
Yes, I can, pretty generally. Federally, there are several types of funding that can be applied for these kinds of projects: hazard mitigation, grant funding, and also the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Grant Fund can be applied for large projects. We also have the Deep Climate Resilience Fund that is currently accepting comments on how we're going to frame our next round of funding for that opportunity. We'll have a new category that we're proposing for building projects to make Connecticut more resilient to climate change. So like stormwater parks, resilient hubs, things that are mentioned in these documents as priorities for this area. So there are opportunities coming up for funding these types of projects.
So Emily, can you provide us kind of a one-pager summation on what those opportunities are, at least for myself, that would be really helpful. And then and just hearing the commentary, from our town representatives and select people and so forth. What is your takeaway, and what would you recommend for us?
I think that it's really great to have these priorities. I think things that the towns can work on together as joint applications are always beneficial, and things that are looking at bigger picture problems are also, more successful usually in these kinds of funding opportunities. And I can provide that kind of general guidance in the one pager as well.
Yes, that would be really helpful, so that we basically have an itinerary of what's out there, and then also, what, quite frankly, rises to the top from an agency review perspective. And with regard to the federal opportunities, do they go through the Department of DEP?
Yes, exactly. We're the actual applicant, and then the town would be the sub applicant. So the town or group would put together the application, and then we would review it to make sure it's consistent with, state priorities, and then we would be the actual applicants with FEMA.
Okay. So yeah, I think that would be really important. And would it be possible for you to get that to us before our next meeting, and then we've had a chance to digest it, and then really kind of walk through it with you in terms of the subcommittee's work and establishing next steps?
Yeah, I can get that to the group next week. So we'll then have another week before the next meeting.
Yeah. It's a 2-week interval, right, Tricia? 2 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you get it to us, even a couple days before, we can certainly, I think, review it. Okay. So anyway, I'd like to hear from the members of this subcommittee, in terms of conversations or things that you want to, put on for discussion or on our agenda.
I think we're heading in the right direction. Locally, I think it's more of a local discussion. I want to look further into stormwater authorities for a way to help pay for some things, but that's more of a local thing. Maybe something Danielle and I could touch base on.
Yeah, John, thanks for bringing that. That was something actually Kate and I had also talked about, just for the rest of the group to know. It was really helpful when I think it was through CERCA, but maybe ultimately through DEEP, they were funding kind of planning grant for municipalities with stormwater authorities. And we as a COG applied for one with a few different towns, and it got us through phase 1, and it was really helpful. And as far as I could tell, there doesn't seem to be funding for that second phase, which would really be how to implement community engagement. And it's just challenging to kind of take on with limited staff and not having the expertise, I think, for a lot of towns. So that was something else that we thought as a region could be helpful, kind of state partnership to look more at implement, since you've given us towns the authority to start doing stormwater authorities. I think New London is the only one in the state who has one so far. So that was just something else that might be a useful local state partnership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, okay. I mean, I think we're at the point now where we want to invite Johanna to the climate leader from OPM, and you're going to get the contact information, Tricia, so she can be with us at our next meeting. And then Emily's going to share with us this list of resources. And if there are, from the individual town perspective, other issues, that are common, then share them with us now or in an email. And I'm thinking that, that's where we will go in our next subcommittee meeting in terms of, talking about what's out there now and how we can work collaboratively with the region to try to leverage that and begin preemptively to address the resiliency issue, which is so overwhelming. Other conversations, issues that we right now perhaps have neglected or that you see needing us to deal with at this point?
I would say the only thing for me,
yeah.
Is with the sewer in Stonington, it's really more local, is it's preventing us from having any new development. And we have some stuff in the pipeline that a lot of local developers and statewide developers are looking at. And that's one thing that's going to prohibit us for moving forward on any of those projects. So if we can get a priority in regards to solving that problem on the Stonington side, would be great.
So can someone talk to me about, okay, you've got the moratorium, and what are the to-do initiatives in order to move beyond a moratorium? And where is this? What's going on? It is very local. You're absolutely right.
I really have more to say on what I shared at the beginning, which is that, thanks to that kind of 50-50 state partnership, we've done all the design engineering work, but now it's come back at a $3.4 million price tag. And the way the current setup is with DEEP is it's a 20% grant, 80% loan. And so our WPCA, I think, is actively exploring how to fund that. And I think the only feedback I got from our WPCA director in preparation for this meeting was if there was any flexibility at looking at infrastructure money to help offset that, because obviously 80% basically self-funded, 20% grant is a bit challenging to take on something that large. That obviously it's in the direct Mystic area, so it benefits tourism quite a bit. So that's why we brought it up on this call. We always have issues with other places with our sewer we wouldn't bring up because they're not really related to the topics of this group, but we did feel like, just granted it serves so many of the restaurants, hotels, and that it, as Chris mentioned, it's preventing potentially future development. But it's such a short-term problem. I just don't know if we'd have the capacity to look at this right now, but if we're facing this, maybe other places are too, in terms of just that 20-80% structure breakdown.
Yeah.
Excuse me, this is John. I apologize. I have to step off the call. Been a good meeting though, and I look forward to the next one. Thank you.
Thanks,
okay,
John.
Thanks, John. Yeah. Hey, Danielle. So this might be a conversation that we should have with Commissioner Boughton, because he, has been deputized with regard to the infrastructure, the federal infrastructure program dollars, resources. Unless Matthew has anything to throw in at this point. Oh, good. Here's the commissioner. I don't know if you. Thank you. Just in the nick of time. Did you hear Danielle's conversation here about this moratorium and, the 80% self-funded, which is, 20% self-funded.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, 20% grant, 80% loan. Yeah. And again, we appreciate that even exists, but that was the conversation we wanted. Our WPCA director wanted me to at least bring up if there was any other avenues we should be looking at. It's about a $3.4 million price tag to line the pipes to prevent the inflow that's happening.
Yeah, so this is the Clean Water Fund you're talking about, or? Yes. Yeah, it's oversubscribed right now, but that's the bad news. The good news is that each year there's plus up money going into the Clean Water Fund. So, and the BIL is a 5 to 6 year program. It's going to come up for authorization in about 2 more years, but I think everybody, it's not a political thing. Everybody agrees on infrastructure. So I anticipate them continuing the program. So if you don't get it right away, just keep an eye on it. And when they open it up again, I'm sure you'll make a pretty good case for that. And that's not lead pipe, right? So what you're doing is you're getting rid of any intrusion from the sewer system, right? So common problem around Connecticut. So keep your eye out for it.
Danielle, I would just also note that like if that sewer line is running down the center of a roadway and the roadway is reconstructed, then potentially disturbing the ground may impact the pipe further and cause it to fail. And so it would be a coverable expense.
All right, thanks. I'll be sure to bring that back to them. Thank you, guys.
So, yeah, we don't exactly have a package with a bow on it here, but maybe some other prospects, Danielle, that locally you all could vet. Okay, so having said that, are there any other topics that we haven't identified that we should in this subcommittee, knowing what we're going to be having on next subcommittee agenda going forward?
So I had circulated, or I sent just maybe an hour or so ago to Tricia, a document. We'd spoken last meeting about the idea of special taxing districts, special services districts, and the process to create those, and how you can do those, what they can be used for, and how they can help to kind of finance some projects like the ones we're discussing here. I also want to highlight for the group, last year, the governor's bill, SB 11, dealt with the idea of resiliency improvement districts, which would be something that the municipalities could either separately or jointly, in this case, get together, form a district, and essentially develop a district so that the incremental value created out of certain projects that will increase the value as a result of some climate change type projects would be able to be used to finance this type of projects. That did not pass last year, but it's something that was proposed last year and could be a potential vehicle for something to help out the financing of these projects.
Is that something, Matthew, that you're going to be bringing forward again this year?
I'm not sure. I would not be surprised, but I'm not sure that we are bringing it forward this year.
Okay. You said it was SB 11?
SB 11, I believe it was sections 1 through 10 of that bill.
Okay. Okay. And that was an environment bill?
That was, yes, it was a governor's bill, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's also instructive and helpful. Okay, and you said you circulated the information to us on the taxing districts?
Yes, I had circulated. There was a nice summary that OLR had put together a few years ago and gives a nice description on how they're created, what they can do, and how they work. I think there are some positives with that. It's already in statute. It's something that can be done without any further legislation and acted upon by the municipalities. So just information out there as potential options, not something that you have to do, but just something that's available.
Yeah. And did we circulate that, Tricia?
I just sent it to her shortly.
Oh, just now. Okay. All right.
I'm about to circulate it within this next second.
Okay. Well, that's all right, because I'm not going to be able to, digest it or deal with it at this point. But okay, so that's very helpful. And we can maybe, chew on it a little bit next working group session. Okay, that's great. Thanks, Matthew. Appreciate that. Okay. Other items that we have not that we've neglected and should be getting out there at this point. So seeing none, and knowing that everybody's got such busy days, I offer you 31 minutes more of your day. That's my gift to you. Okay, well, listen, I so appreciate this group, really, everybody being here, and it is a chance, for us to connect and, work together because it's, I think strength in numbers always, at the end of the day, pays off. Okay, if there is nothing further, I want to thank our clerk, Tricia, who's always there, boots on the ground, and everybody for being with us today. And we will see you, and Trish will send out those notices for our next meeting, which is typically in a 2-week interval. So best to you all, and enjoy this beautiful fall weather, and let's keep the Florida rains away from us. Thanks, folks. Be well.